Hello on the Rockers. Tonight we have a very special guest. Multi-hyphenate entertainment legend Charles Busch is here to share stories and talk about his new book, just in time for the holidays, Leading Lady, a memoir of a most unusual boy. With me, your favorite host with the sassy most. Raise a glass, let the drinks begin. It's On the Rocks.
And most poor suckers are starving to death.
I'd like to propose a toast.
This is On the Rocks with Alexander, where I drink with your favorite celebrities as we talk about fashion, entertainment, pop culture, reality TV, and, well, that's about it. So pop a cork, lean back, and raise a glass to On the Rocks.
Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Lord have mercy, buttons and bows and pantyhose. On the Rocks podcast, the place where we're too glam to give a damn. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at On the Rocks On Air, and on Facebook, On the Rocks Radio Show. Send me an email, book me for a pride, wedding, funeral, quinceanera, bris. I don't care. I'll be there. Info at ontherocksradioshow.com. We got your questions for today, so I'm very excited. Send us your guest requests. Who do you want to see on the show? Info at ontherocksradioshow.com. The show's presented by Straw Hit Media. You can watch and or listen to our now over 335 episodes at ontherocksradioshow.com for free. You can watch us on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV on the Outlet.tv app, Facebook Watch, streaming on SVTV with Pride, and on Channel 31 in Boston, of all places. Hello, Boston. We proudly tape at UBNGO Studios, your one-stop place for podcasting. Okay, I am so excited. So we're just going to get right into it. An absolute honor for me to introduce the man who needs no introduction, Charles Busch, playwright, actor, director, novelist, cabaret performer, and drag icon. He's the author and star of over 25 plays, including The Divine Sister, The Lady in Question, Red Scare on Sunset, The Tribute Artist, The Confessions of Lily Dare, and of course, Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, one of the longest running plays in the history of off-Broadway. And his play, The Tale of the Allergist's Wife, ran for 777 performances on Broadway, won the Outer Circle Critics John L. Gassner Award for Playwriting, received a Tony nomination for Best Play, and is the longest-running Broadway comedy of the past 25 years. Charles has written and starred in the film version of his plays Psycho Beach Party and Die Mommy Die, the latter of which won him the Best Performance Award at the Sundance Film Festivals. And who can forget, for 2 seasons, he appeared as Nat Ginsburg on the HBO series Oz, and is the author of the autobiographical novel, which I have a signed copy, Whores of Lost Atlantis. He has directed 2 films, the Showtime short subject Personal Assistant, and a feature, A Very Serious Person, which won an honorable mention at the Tribeca Film Festival. And due to his love and knowledge of film and theater history, has appeared as a guest programmer and in numerous documentaries for Turner Classic Movies, and has lectured and conducted master classes at many colleges and universities. And in 2003, he received a Special Drama Desk Award for career achievement as both performer and playwright, and was given a star on the Playwrights Walk right outside the Lucille Lortel Theater. He's also the subject of the acclaimed documentary film The Lady in Question is Charles Busch. Oh, God, there's so much here. He's so accomplished. He's also... No, there's more. He's a 2-time MAC Award winner, has performed his cabaret act in many cities. And in winter of 2016, his show, The Lady at the Mic, premiered at Jazz at Lincoln Center's American Songbook Series. And for his first CD, Charles Busch Live at Feinstein's 54 Below, was released by Broadway Records. And his latest book, Just in Time, a best gift for the holidays, Leading Lady, a memoir of a most unusual boy, is now available wherever you get books. It's juicy, it's intimate, it's touching, and hilarious. It's a review of his life. We find out all the tea, everything you'd want from Charles and more. Please finally welcome Mr. Charles Busch.
God. Oh, my God, I'm exhausted.
It's like the Kennedy Center honors, it just is on and on and on.
I have to read the whole thing.
No, I have to. What an accomplishment. And what an honor. I'm sure so many people have told you what your pieces have meant to them from the theater world, from the acting world, from the entertainment world at large. And it's hard to imagine how drag could be so mainstream today if it wasn't for pioneers like yourself, making men dressed up as women part of mainstream entertainment. And I know, and you talk about this in your book, do you consider yourself a drag queen per se?
Oh, gosh. I'd rather not, but, I would think I'd come off like an old fogey if I said I dislike the term. I guess it's in a way I'm very proud of the fact that I've been embraced by both the theater world and the drag community, and that's really great. But yeah, I guess am I splitting hairs to say that I've never performed in a club setting. I never lip sync. Um, I I've always billed as Charles Busch, and I play different women and some occasionally men in all these plays. But I don't know. No, I guess we're all birds of a feather, and I certainly have devoted, my God, almost 50 years to playing female characters. Comes from a very deep, profound place within me. So call me whatever you want, as long as you know it's with affection.
And we know your works usually deal with grand dames of yesteryear. And you owe your father appreciation for you getting to know the starlets of classic Hollywood. Can you share that with the audience, how that came to be?
Well, I hope he comes off okay in my book. He
Yeah.
was a bit of an absentee father in my early years, and I really was raised by because my mother died when I was 7 years old, and I was basically raised by her older sister, my Aunt Lillian, who's kind of the leading lady of the title of the book.
Yeah.
My father was just a lot of fun, and he was hopelessly stage struck, wanted to be a opera star. That's a very hard thing to do, even though he had a good voice. He had a record store, and anyway, there was he loved classic film. My father was like a a heterosexual guy with rather stereotypical gay tastes. Loved opera, loved old movies, and not necessarily butch movies like westerns or war
Right.
films. He liked Betty Davis and Joan Crawford and all that. And so anyway, there was a period where after my mother died, and we had to have a live-in housekeeper. So my room was given to her, and so they put in twin beds into my father's room because he was never there. He was
Yeah.
either at work or he was around going through the ranks of divorcees and parents without partners. But then he would get home, from a date at about 11 o'clock, let's say, and he'd want to watch old movies. And so I'm supposed to be asleep, because I have to get up to go to school. But I mean, who could sleep when you've got Betty Davis and Dark Victory on the TV, or Vivian Leigh and Waterloo Bridge? So I'd stay up very late, and it was a wonderful time for me to be alone with my father, real quality time with him, and it gave me the backlog of film that's been the great inspiration for so many of my plays. People often, when I do a new play, somebody says, "Oh, did you do a lot of research on the films that you're evoking?" I said, "No, I did my research before the age of 10."
And I want to talk about your father, because you share very candidly about him not being able to raise you properly, and that's when you went to live with your aunt. On top of the grief of losing your mother at such an early age, and then the kind of grief of losing your father figure because you went to go work with your aunt, how does a little kid get through that?
Well, I don't think anybody quite realized how fucked up I was, to be honest, because I was somewhat quiet, and I have always, to this day, I say I'm one of the world's great self-amusers. I don't require a lot of attention, oddly enough, and maybe I do. That's why I, put myself, in the spotlight. But anyway, I think somehow in this house of grief, I slipped by. I have two older sisters, and but I did drift, and at a certain point, between the age of 8 and 14, I kind of went downhill, particularly as far as school went. When I was in other situations, I really wasn't this withdrawn person, but I didn't function in school, at all. And at a certain point, my aunt went to like a parents' day at my school. I was still living in Westchester in the suburbs of New York. And I had pulled a real fast one and had made her think that my father had seen my report cards and had him, he didn't really care that much,
Yeah.
but he thought somebody else was seeing the report cards. And so when Aunt Lane went to school, and every teacher said that they were going to leave me after left back, that I was failing every course, and she was quite shocked and thought maybe she dropped the ball, even though she really didn't. So she convinced the principal of the suburban school that I should go to summer school in New York City, where she could supervise me, and that if I passed these courses, then I should continue with into ninth grade. And so I moved in with her ostensibly just for the summer, and it really was a mixture of kind of Auntie Mame and the miracle worker, because I really was really kind of I couldn't focus at all. I couldn't concentrate on anything, and it was really in a way, the great summer of our lives, not in joy or anything, but in just, well, for her, she stepped up, and I'm in a very emotional place these days, so forgive me if I
No.
get choked up, but just yeah, she saved my life, really. She did.
And you talk about her so beautifully and in the book. Was it easy to transfer your love to her, being in this like new environment?
Oh, the thing is, well, I was always half living with her anyway. Even when my mother was alive, I had this bond with Anthony, and I was spending. My mother was quite fragile, and so I think often I spent the weekends in New York City at my aunt's apartment, to kind of, just take pressure off my mother, perhaps. Uh, so we were extremely close, always, and so when I ultimately went to live with her, it it wasn't. What was difficult was a suburban kid moving into New York City, and I was, when you're utterly miserable, you hate where you are, but you're terrified
Yep.
of the unknown, all that. I was a mess. I gave her a hard time, and I wasn't, uh, just easily, you know, putty in her hands. I was kind of in a state of hysteria most of the time, and so frustrated at my own ignorance, that an inability to focus and concentrate on math or science or biology or any of those courses that I was failing. And I would just, we'd be doing my homework every night together, and she would hold a cold compress to my head, so I'd stay awake, because I just, as soon as we'd open a book, I'd fall asleep. But I'd run from the table sobbing and using everywhere, I had the filthiest mouth, every combination of four-letter words directed at myself, condemning my total being such an idiot and a moron, not being able to do what other people found so easy. But she would just lead me back to the table, and we'd continue.
And going back to your father, you talk about your relationship in the later years. Him coming to see your show. You even talk about AIDS with him. How did you kind of circle that relationship back? And did part of you kind of have to forgive him for not being there as a father?
Yeah, it was weird. My aunt was extraordinary and made really every right choice for me, because she knew what the raw material was. She wasn't like one of those parents that has a fantasy of who they want their kid to be and make them conform to it. She took the raw material. So, but where she was human, and maybe made a mistake because she was human, was that she at a certain point thought my father really was kind of a danger in his negligence to my sister and I, that she stopped protecting his image, because after my mother died, she did try to think, oh, he needs a strong male figure.
Right.
So she never let me know as a child his excesses and negligence. Uh, but at a certain point, she couldn't take it anymore, and it was really horrible. She kind of dropped the curtain on him, and it was, it was basically you have to choose him or me, and I chose her. I knew right away that she was responsible and had the means to protect me and all this. My father was like a 17-year-old boy, basically.
Yeah.
Uh, so I had to. I felt as a kid, if I felt any warmth toward him, I was betraying Aunt Lillian,
Wow.
and so I just kind of froze.
Yeah.
And as I say in the book, I kind of developed the ability that's really lasted my whole life, and that I can, I'm not proud of it, but I can fool somebody into thinking that everything's great with us, and inside the door has closed, and they won't know it. So it's not something I'm particularly proud of, but I think it stemmed from having to sort of fake it with my father.
Right.
Yeah. But then later, much later, decades later, my ex-partner, Eric, and my sister really encouraged, this was basically after Aunt Lillian died,
Yeah.
to just open my heart to my father, who really was a darling guy, and affectionate, and, never was never critical, certainly never hit us or anything. I mean, he was just fun, but you wouldn't want to leave your dog with him on a holiday weekend, basically. I'm getting very long answers. I hope I'm not just monopolizing the conversation.
No, I mean, this is such a delight, because we know of your great works, we know of your looks, and it's like, how did Charles Busch come to be? And, this is so important because your characters in all your plays have all these complexities, have all these nuances, and even through the comedy, there's drama and there's pathos there. So I love hearing these stories.
Well, and frankly, I mean, really, I think all writers have certain themes or plot devices or characters that go through everything they write.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that, particularly with playwrights, that they have one play in them and they just keep rewriting it over and over. And I think the tragedy sometimes with writers is they do it the best way too soon. And then everything after that is not quite as good.
Yeah.
But with me, certainly mother and lost mothers and searching for a mother, searching for a child is a recurring theme in so many of my plays. And there's a wonderful actress I work with a lot named Jennifer Van Dyke, and sometimes I think I should be paying her for primal therapy because she's either plays my mother or she plays my daughter, and the tears shed, and I 8 times a week because it comes from a very personal place.
All right, we have a few what I'm going to call Busch quickies, and we got these emails. We're just going to sprinkle them throughout the interview. Busch quickie, who's been your favorite celebrity meeting? And you have literally met everybody. One of my favorite pictures is you sitting next to Ann Miller, just at the table, we just hang out with Ann Miller every now and then.
That was a crazy night. I don't want to sound like I was friends with Ann Miller. No, it was one of these funny things that a friend of mine who was an executive I guess sometimes get it wrong. I think it was at Turner, maybe Turner Home Video, something like that. And anyway, there was going to be a big home video convention in Las Vegas, and he was able to somehow get me a plane ticket to Las Vegas and a place at the hotel, and all these ladies, great musical film ladies, were appearing at this convention, and because they were releasing all their movies,
Right.
And so I think it was Debbie Reynolds, Ann Miller, June Allison, and Esther Williams. And so with the first night I was there, they had a cocktail party to welcome these ladies, and it was at the Desert Inn. And then so after they each one had to speak at the podium, and they all were Debbie and Annie and Junie were all just adorable and saying how they just loved MGM. Those are the great years, all these movies, and they're thrilled to be involved with Turner Classical Movie, not Turner Home Video. And then Esther Williams got up and she said something like, "Well, yes, of course, I don't see a penny out of any of this, but if you can't kill Ted Turner, you might as well join him." Oh God, and then we decided we were all going to go to have dinner downstairs in one of the restaurants at the Desert Inn, and when we got to the elevator bank, I looked around and I didn't see Esther Williams, and I said, "Oh, shouldn't we wait for Esther?" And all the other ladies just sort of shot this like fierce look at me. Okay. So when we got to the restaurant, they all explained that, I think Debbie said, "Oh, we love Esther, we adore Esther, but she's so bitter, and when she gets a couple of drinks in her, she's so sour about MGM, and we just all loved it. It was our great home for years." And then also who walks in but Esther with two big hunky guys, and 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 all the other ladies go, "Oh, Esther, we searched for you. We looked for you. We couldn't find you." And she was a real tough, wise gal, and she just kind of raised an eyebrow and basically went off with her two hunks and sat at the table swinging tequila and sure had a much better time.
She was a spitfire. I had the pleasure of meeting her at a Hollywood Chamber of Commerce award, and I went up to her, and she was just sassy. She was on the ball.
Yeah, smart.
Okay, so another Busch quickie. What's been the worst celebrity meeting? You're like, oh God.
Well, this isn't in my book, but Celeste Holm, the actress,
Yeah, of course.
even all that, and I'd heard she was sort of a tricky kind of lady. Pardon me. I was at some, I don't know, some function, whatever. There were a lot of people there, party, and I see Celeste home and she's talking to somebody, and I waited till, she had ended her conversation. I was very polite. So I went over to her and I said, "Oh, Miss Holm, last night I was watching Turner Classic Movies and saw your movie Roadhouse, and you just were wonderful in that movie. Such a marvelous performance." And I thought, oh, this is kind of cool because it's not like All About Eve. This is a more obscure
Yeah.
movie of hers that she'd be impressed. And oh, dear, she just kind of looked at me like, "Thank you." Oh my gosh! But, listen. I mean, I'd heard she was, a tricky kind of gal,
Yeah.
but who knows what she was going
Yeah.
through? We can't all be at our best
Right.
every time. I'm sure you've had moments where somebody approaches you, I don't know, just
And you're just
you're
not in the mood.
not feeling well or
Yeah.
whatever. So I won't be harsh, but I was a little surprised because I thought I'm doing this really, really right.
All right, you studied drama in high school and at university. While you were at university, what were your best classes that you did well at? What were your absolute worst drama classes?
Well, see, even with all the work that Aunt Lillian did and got me through high school, somehow got me into Northwestern University. I just never really could function in a classroom situation. Surprisingly, I found college easier than high school.
Mm,
I could fake it easier, and at Northwestern, it wasn't just a theater school. I had to take other courses. There were like science
right.
requirements and stuff like that. So I figured that out right away. Well, first of all, I draw really well. I went to the High School of Music and Art. I just have this gift for drawing. Not really a great interest, but just I can draw people. Uh, anyway, so I would take a couple of these art classes where I get the highest mark, and that would balance the classes that I failed. And so with the science classes, there was one that I'd heard there was like the most notorious easy class uh, in geology, and they just called rocks for jocks because I guess like, that, you know,
That sounds like a porn.
challenged, football players could pass this course. Well, so it's actually a cute story. So, I took rocks for jocks, and the teacher explains that we're all going to have to team up in pairs, and the whole grade is based on a project that each team does, and the midterm would be, just explain where you are in that project, and then the final is it's, that you've written a paper about this thing. So I looked around that room and I found the nerdiest, just little fellow who nobody was going to want as their team. And I said, I'll take you. And this boys said, oh, well, I really was hoping to do it by myself because I'm really interested in the subject. I said, hi, you will do everything. I said, just, I just need the grade. So he was delighted to have me
Hey,
as
that's how you do it.
partner. And he was so sweet. And so when it was time for the midterm demonstration, he did the whole thing, and I was Vanna White just with a stick, pointing to things, on the screen as he, somehow did this thing. And then when it came time for the final, he just wrote the entire paper, and I said, well, won't you even let me type it? He said, no, 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 no. And then when I read it, it was so sweet. He kept saying. Then I was Chuck in those days before I went on the
Chuck
stage.
Busch. That's funny.
Chuck Busch. And that was silly name. But anyway, he would write in. Then Chuck did this research and discovered, and Chuck did. I just that was so sweet. I actually passed that course
Because of him. That's
because of him.
awesome. And you made your first drag appearance at school as well. Talk about how that came to be, because I know it was out of frustration that you were just not getting roles as an acting student.
Well, see, I just wanted to be on stage from my earliest memory, and I don't know how good I was at that point. I was so self-conscious, and being a rather androgynous gay boy, but you can't really do that in a part, so you sort of have to try to pretend that you're kind of a normal guy. And,
Yeah.
how real are you going to be? So I was never cast in a play, and then fortunately, when I would come home to New York, I started seeing more experimental theater, and particularly the work of Charles Ludlam, who was this extraordinary figure who was a playwright and brilliant performer and director, had his own company, the Ridiculous Theatrical Company here in Greenwich Village, and he was a big inspiration for me to see that a theater career didn't have to be in the Broadway comedies or musicals that I saw growing up, but it could be whatever you choose it to be, as long as you don't expect to make too much money. Yeah. So anyway, I wrote a play senior year of college about a pair of Siamese twin showgirls. That I wrote it for my friend, my roommate Ed, and I to do, and then there are other people in the cast as well. And we just thought we were going to do it for like on a Sunday afternoon in the lounge at the dorm. That was really nothing ambitious. But I had a friend who Scott, who ran a midnight film series in the big student union auditorium. They would show John Waters movies or Warhol films, and they lost the rights to a movie one week. And so Scott said, "I can give you the rental fee, and you can do your play, in the big auditorium." So we actually really could do it.
Yeah.
And have costumes, and this was the first time that I'd written a play, acted in it, was in drag, directed it, and I didn't quite know what to expect. But then, it was the first time I'd really seen myself in drag too, and I was pleased to see that I could actually look like the character that I'd written. I'm not that a big guy or
Right.
big features. It wasn't hard for me to kind of look kind of real, uh, and so that first I think we did it twice, and it was the great watershed experience for me to see that the audience so responded to me even in this embryonic form. But basically, who I am today, everything I am as a performer was basically set at that first performance. I mean, I like to think I know that I've grown and refined my look, my writing, my acting, but the basic notion was there, and I knew at that moment that this is who I am, and this is what I must do, and it's the only thing I can do.
That's when Chuck became Charles.
Yes, actually, that's very true. That's true. Yeah, it's a silly kind of nickname. Yeah, I was named after my mother's brother Charlie, who was killed in World War II, and he was so beloved. And when I was born in 1954, it really wasn't that many years since he was killed,
Yeah.
and I think it was still so fresh that the idea of uh, calling me Charlie was maybe too painful. So somebody came up with Chuck, which certainly didn't suit me, but yeah. And as soon as I was able, I went to Charles. So, yeah.
Charles, a major theme in your life and in your career has been the show must go on. There's a whole part in your book that I just love. It's that rough period of time when you were doing your one-man show, bookings were slim, audiences were slim, and it just wasn't quite working all the time. And all the odd jobs that you took, I'm sure looking back, it's funny, but at the time it was probably not so funny.
It was funny. It was funny. No,
You did everything.
Think my surviving tool, or whatever you want to say, or I don't know, whatever you call it, is that I had so many. It was like a decade basically between graduating college and then my big break, which was when we did Vampire, Lesbians, and Sodom
Right.
off Broadway. But there was 10 years, and I had so many different kinds of crazy jobs. But I think what was helpful, and particularly maybe because I'm a playwright and an actor, that were other people, other young aspiring actors or whatever, people in the arts, I think they survive by playing a different character. For each time they take a job, they'll try to pretend they're somebody else,
Right.
so it doesn't really hit home, what that they'd rather not be there. But I was the opposite. I thought, oh, this is like my own. I'm the star of my own sitcom, and every week I'll be exactly the same, but I'll be thrown into some crazy situation and see. I'd like to see not how my surroundings will affect me, but how I will affect my surroundings. So it was kind of fun. So I would become this week Charles is a receptionist in a zipper factory. Oh, yeah. This week Charles tries to become an apartment cleaner. Oh my God! This week Charles is a stripper in a male burlesque show. So I thought, and in a way I saw my life as a comedy episode.
Yeah.
So I just thought, oh well, this will be interesting if I stay true to my own whimsical personality, and I'm the most unlikely male stripper, but let's just see how, I affect this world. And so that was interesting. None of these things I did very long. And then the same thing, I guess you're going to ask me, is that I had about a 6-month career as what should we call me, a rent boy, call girl. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was just always looking through the want ads,
Yeah.
gay papers or the Village Voice, and I think I was still living in Chicago, because I stayed in Chicago 2 more years after I graduated Northwestern. It's like, how do you know you're ready to come back to New York, particularly when you're from New York?
Right.
So I stayed in Chicago, but I saw I think it was a gay paper that they were looking for models. I think it was called, maybe models for David's Models. And I knew what that was. And I thought, this would be an interesting way of making some extra cash. And I found it really fascinating. I'm so glad I did that. It absolutely gave me insight into the closet.
Hmm.
Because a number of these men that I spent an hour with intimately were grandfathers and husbands and Their families never in a million years would have known that they were stepping out with me. I found that very, very interesting, in a kind of profound way. And
Right.
I just, and that was really easy to see myself in a sitcom in that because, it was a different man each time the service would call. And so I know what's this one gonna be like. And I think I had maybe one kind of disgusting one where, this guy's kind of gross, but for the most part, I loved every second of it. 6 months was enough.
Yeah.
Learned enough. Move on.
We got this question from an actor. Were you ever tempted during that period to throw in the towel? And what advice do you have for an actor currently going through a dry spell?
Yeah. Oh, it's so hard. It's just cruel too, and you get so frustrated frustrated. You feel like you have so much to offer, but all these gatekeepers. If you just give me a chance,
Right.
and oh, I'm sure I was quite obnoxious at certain points. I knew this guy. I was dating this kind of wealthy stock market, hedge fund guy, and he would take me to the theater and oh, we'd go see some show, and afterwards I'd be saying that ought to be me up there. It was like I was like Fanny Brice and Funny Girl, why can't I be that? And he at one point he said to me, he said, if you were in any other line of work, you would be so successful. They like dumped me because it was obnoxious being with somebody who's just like me. Why not me? And I don't know. I really did have a slightly demented faith that I just felt that if I just tried to not let anything deter me from this path, and if I kept growing, if I got better, if I kept learning, getting better, it had to work out. But which is not to say that tears were shed and frustration and it just seemed like you just keep getting kicked in your ass, kicked in the ass. And I was pursuing my own path, and the first 8 years of my career was as a solo performer because I thought it'd be easier to try to get booked in a cabaret than try to get a play produced. Uh, and when I would perform my act at places like the Duplex in New York City, these little small rooms, but yeah, I'd be lucky to get six people. And at a certain point, how many times can you ask your friends to pay the
Right.
cover charge,
Right.
even if it is only $3? So it just it was really, really tough period. And then and you see people who went to college with you who are getting out doing TV shots on and or leaving the business and earning a good living in other fields. It's so hard, but you just have to keep growing and just if you really really think this is all you can do, just keep at it. And my advice I often is because people say to me, "Isn't it all about who you know?" And if somebody in your family is famous or something or important, and I mean that stuff's helpful,
Yeah.
but I say, particularly when you're young, latch on to the people who you know who are really talented, and maybe together you can come up with an idea that will be your break. That's basically what I did when I was a solo performer. There was just a limit to what the energy I had or how I could pursue this,
Right.
and I had reached a certain plateau. But then when I teamed up with my best friends and we started our little theater company, which wasn't even, we didn't even think we were starting up a company. There was this is in East Village in the 80s, and it was where the milieu where Madonna
Yeah.
emerged and Keith Haring, the artist. And anyway, I went to see a friend perform in this tiny after hours bar art gallery in a very scary neighborhood way down on the Lower East Side. And I was so enraptured with my friend's performance, but really the ambiance of this strange punk, gay, goth East Village world. And I just wanted it seemed like the Kit Kat Club and Cabaret or the Moulin Rouge or you know any places like that. And so I just found the owner, and he didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was, and he gave me 2 nights a month ahead. And I said, let's just do it. And I wrote this little sketch where I'd be in drag as the vampire actress. And I asked my best friend Ed if who was in advertising, if he could come up with the title for me. Because what did it matter? It's not like a real play. We're just doing it twice. So he said, "Oh, vampire lesbians of Sodom." I said, "That'll do."
And the rest is history, literally.
Yeah, yeah. And I asked friends of mine. I asked my roommate who had been directing my act. I asked him if he would direct this, and he was ready to leave showbiz and go to law school, but he thought, why not? Let's for 2 nights, and we didn't have to raise any money because there was no stage or anything, and costumes we just pieced together from our drag boxes that every boy has, and I just asked different friends of mine who I'd known throughout my life in different places, and they all knew me. They didn't know each other, but they all kind of clicked, and we did these 2 nights, and we had so much fun. And so then we decided to do 2 more nights, and then some of 3 weeks, and the owner, the young man who owned the Limbo Lounge where we were playing, said you should be our resident theater group, and so we called ourselves Theater in Limbo, and it was just really was fun, and in a way maybe there was a bit of a lesson learned that when I was grimly pursuing my solo career, nothing really was happening. But when we did these plays, just out of the love of each other and enacting these different cinematic fantasies of mine, and then it was contagious, and the audience just were so taken with me and the company, and then it grew to such proportions very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly that we decided to produce the play ourselves at a real theater, a small theater off Broadway, but they actually had like a bathroom, and we were able to raise. It wasn't very much money. It seemed a lot at the time, $55,000, but we were able to piece it together with everybody's families and friends, and then we got the Provincetown Playhouse, which is actually in New York City in Greenwich Village. And the play opened in 1985 and got a rave review in the New York Times. And from that moment on, I could earn my living in the theater. And no more having to be a hooker or a portrait artist or a receptionist or any of the things that I did.
The Limbo Lounge years, you recount a lot of that time in your first book, Horrors of Lost Atlantis, and then revisit it again in your memoir. And it's such a colorful part of your life. What do you miss most about that period of time?
Well, this is going to sound a little sappy, but I miss the love that we all had for each other. And time goes on, people move away or move out of your life for various reasons. 40 years ago, a lot happens.
Yeah.
But during this magical 6 months, it was such a brief period of time. Although, I mean, it actually went on for 7 years because we did, all these plays, Psycho Beach Party, Lady in Question. I kept this company together with Ken Elliott for 7 years,
Yeah.
which is something I'm very proud of. But the really golden period, in a sense, was early on, and we just loved each other. And I think, I wasn't a kid who really had a group growing up. I was kind of a loner sort of kid for the most part, and to suddenly have this group of people who wanted to play with me was extremely moving.
Well, and to have critics and audiences love it as well. Do you feel the pressure to one up yourself with one success after another?
No. I've had this very odd career, and writing my book has actually given me some insight that I, I'm not really in show business. I've had this I have this odd place in the world, in my world, um, that for the most part, I've never had to answer to anybody. I haven't been in situations with producers or, TV executives, or movie producers. You know, even the few movies I've made have been indie films where, we just, there was no interference at all. Just did exactly what I wanted to do. Uh, I've stepped out from time to time where I've sold TV pilots to HBO and CBS, and I didn't really like it very much. I did it because I had management who encouraged it, but at
Right.
a certain point I thought it's just not for me. I don't need it. And then I wrote the book to a big Broadway musical, rather notorious flop called Taboo that Boy George was the
I love that part of the book, by the way, because you spill all the tea about that experience.
not all the tea, honey. I cut half of it.
Oh my Lord.
My agent said when he read the whole thing, said, I think you need to cut this in half because it's so depressing. It's making me nauseous. So I cut it that half. Also, I didn't really, I didn't want the book to be where I'm settling scores. When I read other people's books, and it seems, I think the person spilling the tea comes off worse than the people that they're dishing. You don't really think, oh, I don't know if I'd like this person the way he's telling all the secrets. So I try to tell enough because I'd like to be provocative, and I want it. It has to be a certain amount of dish. I don't want to write some bland
Yeah.
thing, but I didn't want to hurt people.
We got this as an audience question. Have you ever felt overshadowed by your female personas over Charles Busch, the person?
That's a good question. That's good. Well, I think it happened more early on when I first was doing vampire lesbians and people were kind of discovering me. And I could see that sometimes people would come backstage. There were some people like in the fashion world, and I think they thought that because I was this drag performer, that off stage I was going to be this like real, bitchy
Yeah.
kind of, camp personality and really on, darling, oh, just Miss Thing Girl and all that. That's just not who I am. I mean, I'm not. I resent when then people. Sometimes it's the opposite way, and I'll be interviewed, and somebody said, "Off stage, he's so quiet and shy." And no, but I'm not. Jumping off the ceiling,
Yeah.
throwing glitter. I can be the life of the party, or sometimes I can be a little bit recessive if I'm not in the mood, like many people. But yeah, I could see that there are times when I disappointed people
Mhm.
that they wanted the
Right.
expectation that I was going to be this, wild character. Um, but really, that's not exactly. I'm not really answering the question. Did I ever feel overshadowed? Well, like one time it was a very painful experience. I'd written all these roles for myself where there was a parody element of the movie genre, whatever. And I'd been doing this for, oh, let's see, 85, let's say 10 years. And I wanted to try something different. And I wanted to see what would it be like if I wrote myself a female character, but that was not a spoof at all, but just wrote this kind of Vanessa Redgrave heroic role. And I did this play. It was a play called Queen Amarantha, and it was inspired by a Garbo film, Queen Christina, where I played the queen of a fictional kingdom who is uncomfortable with the female role, and she dresses as a man. Uh, but it wasn't funny, and I remember when we did the first performances, um, the audience was conditioned to think, rightly, they'd seen me play all these female characters, but it was always I was having fun with the movie genre.
Right.
And suddenly now I'm saying, you can't laugh. and they were confused, and they'd be laughing at serious places, and I was just devastated, and I would be changing costumes backstage, and I just kind of be sobbing. But what, can't they give me a break? Can't they just give me a chance?
Yeah.
Give me a chance. But then, Carl Andrus, who that was first, is my dear friend. He's almost like my son because he's quite a bit younger, and he's directed most of my plays for the past 25 years. And this was the first one we did together. And so when we thought about, okay, just what do we do? And now we could have. It was too late to try to make it intentionally funny because that takes you have to rewrite. You got to. But we wanted to see maybe we could work and try to clarify to the audience that they shouldn't laugh there. And so we really analyzed each laugh, inappropriate laugh, and we could say, oh yes, well here I'm doing my big speech to the troops, but the lighting behind me turns bright orange, and yes, it sort of looks like I'm doing Scarlett O'Hara, and so we need to change that lighting cue, and so we killed that laugh. And there are just different places where it's my fault in a way. I'm somehow with that line reading, it's close enough to what I've done before that, so we kept putting all these changes in, and so in a sense we achieved our goal. We made it completely humorless and laugh free. But we learned so much.
Yeah.
And when you learn how to kill a laugh, it also makes you learn how to get a laugh.
Yeah.
And then what we learned, I mean, you really do learn more from your failures than you do your successes. I think, I'm sure I'm not the first one to say that, but what we learned, what Carl and I learned from that too, is that with later plays, we could still have the dramatic moments and the touching moments, and have those and play them for real and be funny at the same time and have fun with the excesses of the film genre. And we had to go too far in one direction to figure out the sweet spot.
Charles, we talked about it at the top of the show, but you have just been through so much loss in your life. A major part of the book happens during the AIDS epidemic, where you literally lose people left and right. Having lost, your mom at such a young age, but you kept hitting the stage. You kept moving forward. How does somebody work through that grief? And we're talking.
Honestly, I'm working through it right now because my sister Margaret, who I just loved more than any person in the world. We were so bonded that we were almost like empaths with each other, and she passed away this past July, and I'm still having a very difficult time. I'll never get over this, but you go on. I mean, I may be crying a lot, alone, but I'm doing a new play. I go into rehearsal tomorrow for a new play, and I just have to be very Katharine Hepburn and go on, press on, keep on going, go. But it's so difficult. My sister Margaret, I mean, really, we fought a lot when we were little kids. She was 2.5 years older, and there's a huge gulf when one kid is 10, the other one's 13.
Oh yeah,
impossible gulf. But when I was 17 and she was 20, we became the same age. Mm-hmm. And from that moment, I tell you, this is the honest truth, we never had one single moment of tension or disagreement in 50 years. Isn't that kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it was all just pure love, pure support. And I just can't. I reach for the phone 5 times a day to check in with her, and or if I do something funny, or hear something funny, I want to share it with her because she loved to laugh more than anything in the world. It ain't easy, baby, going through life, is it? It ain't easy.
Definitely. I think one of the first times I interviewed you, I think, was during the summer, and I was telling you, I was taking care of my mom who was very sick. And she ended up passing away like 2 months ago. And it is that every day I go to text her, because I would text her 30 times a day, even if I was in the same room with her. And and the way that it affects you every single day, you know, there's moments of joy, and you know, you can laugh, but grieving really is for us. You know, it's for the people that are left behind, and it's tough.
And my sister, the last 2 years were, you know, she, you know, was diminished in a certain sense, you know, and but we still got some good laughs.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've kind of blocked out. I've blocked out all the images of her at the end, but in a way it almost makes it worse, because now I only think of her at her best, and so I miss her even more.
Right. I know exactly how that feels. This is an audience question again. What has been a personal moment of triumph for you, not because it was the biggest critical success, but because it was a personal success for you?
Well, I don't want to get too sappy here, but I'll tell you, since we're on the subject of my sister,
Yeah.
I have to say, because, you know, I've lived a pretty self-centered life. You know, my focus really is me, my career, my work, you know, yes, you know. However, I'm really proud that a few years ago, when my sister started her kind of decline, even though she lived, you know, she lived in New York City, and, you know, like 2 miles away from me or something, I had her move into my apartment for 9 months, where I could just take care of her and, you know, feed her and cook for her. And I'm so proud of that, particularly because, as I said, I've lived a bit of a selfish life, and that for those 9 months, I really stepped up, and her needs came before mine, and what Aunt Lillian used to always try to drum into me, that, you know, her standards of giving were so high, almost impossible high, but it was not enough to think of somebody else's needs first, but you had to think of their needs without them asking.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard,
Yeah.
you know, but I did. I really did. I stepped up for those 9 months, and I think I'm more proud of that than anything. Okay, but back to showbiz. I was telling somebody recently, just in a way, that the great nights of your career, at least for me, aren't necessarily from doing a play, but like one night events.
Yeah.
You know, and I played Auntie Mame the
3
straight play
times. Yeah.
a number of times.
Yeah.
But the first time was the best, because it was just a one night event, benefit for it. I think it was the Actors Fund, and we had this all-star cast, you know, playing all the roles, and I got my nephew. My 11-year-old nephew played my nephew, and he was fantastic.
Oh, that's funny.
He'd never acted before, and boy, was he good. He was a little too good. But the big thing that night was that Peggy Cass, who created the role of Agnes Gooch in the movie, she had been in retirement. She was quite old, and she came back and played Gooch. and we had,
That's amazing.
Well, I only found out later that actually they'd asked her if she would be willing to be the host of come out before introduce the evening. And she evidently said, "Well, can I play my own part?" Well, yeah, of course. And she, you know, she moved like an old lady, you know, but her voice was exactly the same, and every line reading was exactly as if she had just shot the movie yesterday.
That's amazing.
And so, you know, Gooch doesn't come on until Act 2.
Yeah, yeah.
When she finally made her first appearance, the audience it was a big Broadway theater, and the audience just went wild, just stomping, and then every single time she opened her mouth, there was another ovation. I mean, there weren't not even necessarily a funny line, but it was exactly as we knew it from the movie.
Yeah.
And
I lived.
And she said afterwards, she said she felt like Maria Callas at the Met.
Wow.
And she honestly, I don't think she really was aware of the affection that particularly gay audiences have for her in that role.
Yeah.
she said it was the greatest night of her life, and
Wow.
she died about a month later.
Wow.
But she had this, isn't
Yeah.
it great though, that she had this extraordinary moment of true appreciation. Yeah, it was one of the great nights of my life, and I couldn't believe when I had to pull her off stage, saying "Live, live,
Yeah.
live." I know I'm not Rosalind Russell, but this really is Gooch.
That's insane. Uh, what an absolute dream. How long did it take you to write Leading Lady? Because you cover so much ground. I can't imagine what kind of process that was to revisit your life.
Well, should I tell you the real truth? I
Yes.
worked on it for like 14 years, but off and on,
Yeah.
because I wrote about 5 plays in between,
Right.
but off and on, I didn't have a clue how I was going to do it. What the format would be, and I would go to Barnes and Noble and look at the shelf of celebrity memoirs and say, "Oh, let's see here. Lena Dunham. Well, her book is all just kind of separate essays, and then Tina Fey. What's she doing? And so I just didn't know, and I would try one way for about 8 months, and then I'd give it to somebody to read, a friend of mine to read, and then and they'd give me real dumb advice. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. And I rewrite the whole thing. I'll give it to somebody else. They say, "Oh, that's all wrong." "Oh, you're so right. You're so right." And it took me forever. I tell this one story. One of the first attempts was I thought, "Oh, maybe I should just do it on a tape recorder." And this 14 years ago, there was some newfangled kind of recorder that you speak into, and then you just plug it into your PC, and it transcribes it automatic. So I had my friend Julie Halston, who's really my muse,
And featured quite heavily in the book.
heavily in the She's
Yep.
an outrageous girl, and she's retained. She's had a really nice career.
Yeah.
She's Bitsy Von Muffling on Sex and the City and just like that, and she's a wonderful career apart from me
Right.
at my work. But she's retained her Long Island accent. So I interviewed her. I thought we jogged each other's memories about our early days, and we did a couple hours. And then when I put it into the computer, it all came between her Long Island accent and my sort of ground speaking. It was all gibberish. It looked like it was Bulgarian. Not one word was legible. So I guess I just have to write it. But I worked on it for so long, and it's a fascinating process. But really everybody should do it, whether just for your own therapy. You get into this zone of memory, and things start popping up that you like. The name of a neighbor's dog when
Right.
you were 8 years old. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Just all sorts of stuff, and you do. It's painful. I mean, I did sit there when I had to. Well, Margaret and I, my sister and I, we had never, as close as we had never discussed the day my mother died, where each of us was at that moment, and I had to, call her up, and just for the first time, isn't that interesting to hear we were, in our 60s, never discussed it, and that was fascinating and very emotional to relive that. So to really remember. And the hardest part of the book for me to write was the whole thing about doing vampire lesbians of Sodom, because I'd already written this Roman Clay novel about that period, and then I talked about it in countless interviews or just telling the story to friends,
Right.
new people I'd meet. And I boiled it down to cabaret banter for a cabaret act I did about my life in the 70s. So now when it was time to actually write it fully and explore what was I really thinking, what exactly happened, that was hard to do. I had kind of, just simplified it so, and that was the most difficult thing to do.
Well, you did it beautifully, because I discovered, more parts to that period of your life, and I'm a big fan of horrors of Atlantis. So I thought you did it so well. What I really like is the layout of the book. You become so immersed in your life because you don't just keep it linear, you know. We're in the future, we're in the past, you know, and it's such a joy to just be enveloped by all of these stories that you had as a youth and through the 70s and now. It's such a treat to be able to experience you in that intimate way. You know, we know Charles Busch from the headlines, from the media, from the interviews, and now we really see Charles Busch.
You're exaggerating just a tad, darling. Just a tad. Yeah, whatever. I'm flattered. Thank you.
Is it odd to be referred to as a legend, as an icon, or is it a dream come true?
Well, but it's very weird and peculiar because I'm a legend to some people, but to the majority of people, they've never heard of me. So it's kind of hard to know, like, so like, what are you? And you know, I can't get a swelled head because right after somebody says, "Oh, you're a legend," and treats me with great respect, the next person will kick me in the ass. Say, "Who are you? I don't know. I never heard. I wouldn't recognize you in a lineup." Yeah. So see, you know, I really can't get too arrogant about it. But yeah, what's not to love?
Yeah.
In a way, I have a very sweet form of celebrity because I don't have that kind of grotesque fame that these people have where they can't walk down the street. You know, in the book, I talk about when I interviewed Patrick Swayze, and he would tell me the stories that he literally could not walk down the street or go into a bar because some guy would think like, "Oh, I'm gonna get, you know, it'd be cool. I'm gonna take out Swayze."
Yeah.
You know, just this kind of grotesque fame that people have, but it's rather sweet that I would say maybe every 2 or 3 days somebody stops me on the street and says, "I love you."
Yeah.
I mean, everybody should have that.
Yeah.
Every single person in the world should somebody should come up to you and say, "Oh, I think you're great." And I'm very, very grateful to that.
All right, Charles. Let's say Paramount wants to make a film of leading lady. Who was playing Aunt Lillian, and who was playing you during the Limbo Lounge years?
Well, Aunt Lillian actually, I think Kate Blanchett
Ah,
was really good. She kind of looks like my aunt, the kind of pretty
yeah,
with
yeah.
prominent features and tall and you know angular. I think she'd be really, plus she can
Yeah.
play anything. So I think she'd be
That's a
good.
good choice.
Actually. She'd be good, and well, maybe like Jennifer Lawrence could play me as sort of a male role.
That would be a unique turn.
I don't think Timothy Chalamet is really. I'm not sure he's quite right for it, is he?
I don't know. I just saw him in Wonka, and he surprised me.
I haven't seen it, but he's supposed to be great in that. He's more kind of flamboyant?
Flamboyant, singing, dancing. He actually smiles throughout the whole film. Yeah.
Oh, let's get him. Let's get
Let's
him.
do it. Let's do
Anyway,
it.
he's signed.
Yeah.
Timothy Chalamet. Kate Blanchett.
I love that. And I love seeing the picture of your Aunt Lillian. She just looks so regal, and everything as you describe her. The pictures in the book are worth the book because it's
Really cool.
very, very.
Ben Bell, Smart Pop, did a gorgeous job producing this book, and you know the cover is gorgeous,
Yeah.
and then the 24 full color
Yeah.
pages. I mean, it's beautifully produced.
And again, for the holidays, what a great gift and what a great read. And finally, what is your message to your fans?
Live, live, live. Do I have a message? Do I have a message? Just try to be brutally honest with yourself, but at the same time, you know, have a sense of fantasy.
Yes.
And you can juggle the two. I think you're in good shape. And then I'll say one last thing.
Yeah.
That I remember one time being stranded. My friend Ed and I, when I was working as a quick sketch portrait artist in the boardwalk in Wildwood, New Jersey, and Ed and I wanted to go to the bars in gay bars in Atlantic City, but the last bus leave Atlantic City for Wildwood at like 1 in the morning or something. And anyway, we were stranded. We couldn't get laid, and we ended up, up all night and sleeping on the beach
Oh my God.
in Atlantic City. And next morning, we got the bus stop opened at 6 a.m. and we trudged on our disco clothes and coal smearing on our eyes and all dank and moldy. And we got to the bus station, and there was this kind of skinny old black woman with a big old wig sort of half on her head, and she was working at the coffee concession. And she took a look at us, and she was pouring coffee, and she just took one look at Ed and I, and she said, "Baby, it ain't easy." That's the wisest words I'll ever hear. It ain't easy, baby.
Maybe that'll be the title of part 2.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
good. That's a good idea. Good idea.
Charles, thank you so much for chatting with us and for sharing your life in Leading Lady. Get it wherever you get books. It's definitely such a great read, whether you're a fan of theater or not, huh?
And we have the audiobook is out also.
Yes. So what an absolute treat. Where do you want everybody to find and follow you?
Well, I have a wonderful website that my friend Kathy, who's done my wigs for my entire career, she does webs and wigs. And if you go to charlesbusch.com, it's so extensive.
It is.
That you can't even get to it's like finding the source of the Nile. You can never get to the end of it.
It's wonderful. And that gallery tab on your website is great as well.
Good.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a good holiday. I hope you have a good new year. And again, thank you for sharing so much of your life with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed this.
So did I. And when I come to New York, we're going to have coffee.
I've had the gamut of emotions from tears to laughter to gaiety.
That's this book. This is what this book does. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. That has been our fabulous chat with one of my favorite all-time people from entertainment, and just what a joy. Well, that's all, folks. It's always a grab bag of fun here every weekend on The Rocks. Big thank you to our engineer, Tony Sweet, our social media clip editor, Alexis Mendez. And for the holidays, we are doing a special Christmas episode with drag racist Trinity the Tuck. And you were so taken with our episode with Adam Berry from Kindred Spirits about the paranormal, so he's coming back for a part 2. And we're also going to welcome Jelani Remy, who's currently in Back to the Future on Broadway, and the Grammy-nominated Courtney Reed, who's currently in Moulin Rouge. They're doing a project at Joe's Pub in January, so we're going to chat with them. That's all coming up. Please like, share, subscribe, so we can continue bringing this fabulous programming coming your way for free. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, stay sexy, and if you drink, stay tipsy.
This has been another episode of On the Rocks. Tweet me and slide into my DMs on Twitter and Instagram at On the Rocks On Air. Find everything On the Rocks for free at OnTheRocksRadioshow.com. Subscribe, like, review, and share. Until next week, stay fabulous.